All right. Hey friends. Welcome back to another class. I guess we'll call this one class 2. Um, hope everything from the last one made sense. If it didn't, feel free to leave a comment. I'll try to be good about reading those and hopefully responding to them. If not, there's a plethora of resources in the Discord for CMPC Plus with a lot of really talented scripters and a lot of really talented people who would be more than willing to help you in any sort of questions you might have. Um, anyway, we're going to move on to events and kind of like reading the API. So last class, we went over how to go into the like scripting dialog, making sure you have your stuff enabled in the right language, go into event scripts, generate a new tab, and making stuff happen in the interact function. So I'm just going to rewrite some of that code, and this time we're actually going to jump a little bit further in and analyze it a little bit more. So I did var npc is equal to event.get npc. Then I said npc dot, oh, not ncp, ns, geez, npc dot say hello world. I closed it off, and if everything was done right, it functions. It says my name because I forgot to remove its basic interact lines. That's always fun. There we go. Okay, cool. So, yeah, let's figure out what's going on here. So I talked about how you guys probably don't know about this get NPC function just yet and this save function. Um, and the way to kind of learn all those different functions is going to be taking a look at the API. So if we go ahead and click on this API docs button, you can open it in browser. Yes, it says never open links from people you don't trust. This isn't a virus, guys. It's just like a GitHub docs for the API. So you can go ahead and open it in browser, and that'll take us over to the API side of everything. Okay, so we made it to the API. I know it's a bit bright. I wish there was a dark mode, but unfortunately there isn't. Um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff here for you to look at. I wouldn't worry too much about this like net Minecraft stuff. Not really the stuff that's going to be affected by the CMPC API. The stuff we'll mostly be dealing with is this anything with this sort of nopies.npc sort of prefix. But we were dealing with the interact event, so I think the easiest way to go about finding that is going to be using the search bar up here and punch in interact. So as you can see, there's like a lot of stuff that populates here. All this sort of like magic stuff, block event stuff, CMPC stuff, all this sort of stuff. But mostly we want to look under these types because we can see actual events populate here. So there's a couple different ones, and we'll run through them just to kind of see which one kind of falls in line with what we're using. There's the block event for interacting. Not really, doesn't really make a lot of sense. We didn't really interact with a block object. Item interact event. We didn't really interact with a like scripted item or anything like that. NPC event for interact. This one would most likely make sense because we are interacting with the NPC. And then player event interact. We are a player interacting with something, but since we wrote the script inside of an NPC, the one that we would mostly kind of use for this is going to be the like NPC interacting. So we'll just go ahead and click on that and head on in. Again, there's going to be a lot of stuff here. Some stuff you don't really have to worry about. So the nested class summary. This is just going to be, for anyone who knows Java, this is going to be stuff where things that this is inherited by and things that classes that like are in a similar like kind of boat as it. But again, if you're just scripting, don't really worry about this stuff up here. The stuff you really want to look at is the method summary. So the method summary is going to tell you all the sorts of different things you can do with this specific kind of event. And you can reference them using that whole event prefix that we talked about last class, or whatever you end up naming it, whether that's event, E, or just A, whatever you end up doing with it. This specific interact event only has one method that we can see here. And it says get player, and the method here says get player. No description, sadly, because I guess they just didn't care about putting one. But then the modifier type. So it'll tell you the type of object it'll return. Here it says an iPlayer, which we'll get to here in a bit. Um, but for the method, it just says there's getPlayer. But I can probably imagine the question you guys are asking, which is, I didn't reference getPlayer. I used getNPC, and that's kind of not in this method summary here. Well, all the NPC events kind of inherit a couple of different sort of methods. I know I didn't talk. I said to not kind of worry about the inheritance in the classes up here, but worrying about the methods it inherits are a different story. So every NPC event inherits a method from being an NPC event itself. Basically, a way to think about that is there's a common example in like Java, which is kind of animals. Um, every animal inherits a specific kind of function from being an animal, which is eating. But maybe a pig, it'll do a function called oink, and a duck will do a function called like quack. Um, they have their own sort of functions to make the animal sounds they make, but all of those animals have a function for eating. Um, Essentially, this get NPC method is the eating in this kind of analogy. Every NPC event can do the get NPC function and call it from there. It can also call this function called get hook name, but I mean, I haven't used that one. You can take a look at what it does, or we can if we click into it. It just returns a string of what the hook is. So I believe for the interact event, it'll just return interact as a string, and we can kind of test it out here a little bit later. But again, the main focus of this is going to be it inherits the method from being an NPC itself, or an NPC event of get NPC. If you see that it says something that it inherits a method, that means you can use that. And if you want more information on that specific method, you can just click into it and it'll bring you to the main page of that sort of method. So here we are in the kind of NPC event page for all the different NPC events, and it's this one shows you actually all the different events that kind of inherit this sort of NPC event kind of class. But again, you can look into this and kind of learn a little bit more information if you want. I think it's pretty direct, but I've also been doing scripting for a little while as well as Java, so this makes a little bit more sense to me now. But again, don't worry too much about that if you don't want to. Just take a look at this get NPC event. So if we look, the get NPC event returns a custom NPC object. So this custom NPC is an interface. Now interfaces are again something new to you guys, I can imagine. Interfaces are just a sort of collection of methods that you can use to interact with a certain object, that's probably the simplest way to put it, and about as much as you'd kind of need to know for doing CMPC scripting. So a really fun thing you can do with the methods, if you do get NPC, you can just click on this custom NPC object to see all the methods it can do. So at the top, you can see it says a little description of what it is. It says represents a customizable NPC with a wide variety of properties such as appearance, behavior, combat, loot, and more. The interface extends living entity and animation capabilities, defines methods, and adjusting almost every aspect of the NPC. That was a lot of words just to say, basically with this interface, you can do whatever you want with an NPC. And also it inherits a couple of methods similar to the interact event that we talked about a little while ago. So if we take a look, there's so many different methods we can do. We can do can fly, can breathe, get age. I'm just going to do like a quick scroll down through this page, and you can see there are so many methods. And then once we get to the bottom here, there's also all of these methods. So you remember earlier when we looked at the interact event, how it had maybe one method it inherited from being an NPC event. Since the custom NPC object itself is an entity by Minecraft standards, it inherits all of these different methods. It's also a living entity, so it inherits all of these methods. And then it's also an entity of the entity living base, so it inherits all of these methods. So there's a lot of methods you can access. And again, if you want more information on each one of those, you can just click into them and kind of see different stuff that they can do. So usually if you're looking at the custom NPC kind of like methods that you can do and you're missing some pretty basic ones, it's possible that it's in one of these. So one of the basic ones that's not in the actual NPC interface itself, but it does inherit from being a entity in the world, is its position, or its X, Y, and Z. So if we do, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? If we do get block X, that'll tell you the exact block it's standing on, or the exact X coordinate. You know, there's get position, which will get you its position if I can find it. Jeez. Get position. That'll get you its exact position as a sort of position object, which is a whole different beast and one of my favorite kind of objects in CMPC API because it's super versatile, but I'll try not to ramble on too much about that. There's a lot of basic stuff in here, though. There's getting the object's NBT, which if you've messed around with Minecraft commands at all, you'll know that NBT is a super, like, important stuff to entities in the way that you can, like, manipulate a lot of their sort of properties even more. You know, you can check if the NPCs or if the entity is underwater. You can set its motion, which is kind of like pushing it in one direction or something like that. See if it's burning, all this sort of stuff. The living entity stuff is a little bit weird. The entity package is a pretty direct for all entities. The entity living base is also pretty direct. It's for like actual living entities with like health, so like the player, mobs. There actually is a package for monsters, but we won't worry about that right now. That's gonna be like for like health, dealing damage to the entity, all that sort of stuff. The entity living is like in this weird limbo in between where it catches all like the weird functions that are kind of like outliers. So there's like if it can pick up loot, giving it a custom name tag, but there's also like a set name function in the NPC. So it's a little bit weird. The entity living doesn't have a lot that I use too often, but again, it's just important to know all these sort of different, that you have access to all these sort of different methods. So in the script that I wrote earlier, I used the say function. So if we want to find the say function, you do a couple different ways. You could search it up here, should be pretty easy. You custom NPC say, and it's actually right there, which is great. Or since we're in the NPC interface, I can just do Control F and punch in say, and it's going to bring us to the first result, which is right there, which is perfect. So a lot of these, so it'll have, if you're looking at it here in this list, it'll have a short description of what the function does, hopefully. If not, you can always trial and error, but hopefully it'll have a little sort of like blurb of what the function does. So, or the method. So it's the say method. If you do npc.say or custom npc.say, whatever the prefix is, you'll see that it makes the NPC broadcast a message or say a message. And if you look at its parameters, it's a little bit weird because there's this kind of gap in space in between the Java Lang string and message. Basically, what this is telling you is the thing that you're inputting into this function is going to be of the data type of a string. Now, that data type is one that we talked about last time. And this data type is going to represent your message. That's just the name of the variable that they put here for that. So basically what it's telling you is you have to put a string in here in order to make this operate. You can put integers in here, and I'm pretty sure they'll just stringify them, which is a whole different thing. But either way, you put a string in here and they'll send a message. If you put, like, let's say a player object in here, which would be like an iPlayer, something fully different, it'll be confused and it'll kind of get weird. So you want to put a string message in here, and that'll make it work. Let's look at another example of this. Oh, like right up here, this sort of limit fly height, right? This one is saying it needs a Boolean, and that'll represent the limit. So basically what this is telling you is if you put like a number in here, it'll be confused and say, that's kind of not what I want. It wants a Boolean. So you're going to put a Boolean in to represent true or false if you want to, let's see, if you want to enable a limit to the NPC's flying height. Hopefully that makes sense. All of the methods that have like input or require input have this sort of prefix of what the type is for like what they want in their function. Some functions don't have any sort of parameters that they need and can just be called as is. So this get world lines will just return the world lines of the NPC. You don't have to put anything in. However, you do have to put these parentheses to activate that sort of function. If you look here, they'll say that this one returns an int or an integer. Get title will return a Java-lang string, which is again just a string. Get speed will return double. Get skin type returns a byte. So on and so forth. Some of these like functions do return different types of objects. That's not from like our initial sort of like basic data types. Like this get timers returns an iTimers, returns like the timers interface. Get lines returns, or get world lines returns an iLines. And those are a couple of like different those are data types that are a little bit more involved. And if you click into them, they have their own sort of functions. And it kind of ends up leading into this sort of like a rabbit hole where you can get different sort of objects off of different things, you know? So we started out from the event.interact, and we were able to go from the interact event using that event to get the NPC. And then from the NPC, we have access to all these methods. And then let's just say for the NPC, we go into what's a good one? What's a good one? We do get timers. That's one you might use a lot. From the NPC, we do get timers, and that brings us to a timers object, which is a whole other thing. And then from there, we can say we can force start, which is like starting a timer. You know, we can kind of like slowly go down and down and down and dig through these levels to get exactly what we want from a specific event. And 9 times out of 10, the only way that you're going to be able to get an NPC object or even get like most entities or stuff like that in the world is through an event. You can't just kind of like raw grab an NPC out of thin air outside of an event. With the exception of a few cases. And again, we'll get to those. But for now, I just want you guys to like think about events as a way to get the NPC and interact with the world and get different objects. We're going to go back to our interact event. So I'm going to punch in interact here, go into the NPC interact event. And there was another thing here. There was the get player. So if we instead, we can do both. We don't even have to do instead. But if we instead used get player instead of get NPC, that would return a whole different kind of object. Now players have their own functions that you can do and interact with in a fun, special way. So there's like get attributes, get hunger, get inventory, magic data, all this kind of nonsense, you know, all this crazy stuff. You could set their position, and players also inherit a lot of different methods from being both an entity and an entity in the living base. You can add potion effects to them. You can see what entities the player is looking at. A really important one is going to be getting the player's world, which I can't find. Because it's from the entity. Okay. Really important one is going to be getting the world object. So your world object is a really like strong tool that allows you to interact with the like sort of world that you're in, and like just the environment around the player or NPC. So that allows you to create items, cause like explosions, get like a block at a specific position, see which players are close to a certain area, all this sort of stuff. And that's like a lot of like foundational stuff that you can use to build up these like crazy scripts with all these like cool attacks and stuff like that. A really important one to keep track of is like raycasting a block or raycasting entities. So where you can just like cast a ray from a position and see where it ends up. You know, the world object is a really powerful tool along with the player object and the NPC object. Those are going to be your kind of big three for everything you'll want to do with scripting. So we're going to take a step back from this. We're going to hop back in game, just take a look at a couple of things. Okay, we are back in game and ready to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and crack open our NPC again. Okay, so we have our event. We called the event here, and we used the get NPC function to get the NPC that we talked about and saw in the API. Then from there, we used our say function on the NPC to have the NPC say hello world. We're going to introduce another variable here. We're going to call this variable something pretty direct so it's easy for people to see. We're going to call this variable player. Guys should probably be clued in on what this variable is going to represent, but if you don't, this is going to represent our player object, or the player that's interacting with the NPC at this time. So what we can do is we're going to say event dot get player. Important things to keep note. Any method, function, whatever that you see in JavaScript or that you see in the API, or even functions that you can make later down the line, which we'll get to at some point, all of those are case sensitive. So if a function says get NPC with a capital N, you have to capitalize that N, or else the function will not work. And I'll actually show that off right now, because what better way to learn than through error? So if I try to right click on this NPC, nothing's happening. He was working a second ago. What's going on? Well, if we look, event.getNPC is not a function. So that's my mistake. Let me capitalize N. But let's say, for instance, you forget to do the parentheses. Now we just have event.getNPC, but there's no parentheses. So we're not calling the method. We're just saying event.getNPC. Basically, what we're saying here is we want to reference a specific parameter of the event, and that parameter's name is getNPC, which, if you were to look at the sort of actual background of the actual CNPC mod, there's no parameter called getNPC for this event. So if I back out of this, we're gonna get a whole new error, which is getNPC is not a function. Oh yeah, it just doesn't work. Yeah, if I call this, yeah, it just doesn't. Oh, it's saying it's not a function of that object. That's fun. Well, it's definitely an error for sure. Anyway, we're going to add back our parentheses, and this will clean things up nice, and it's going to say hello world again. Nice. Exactly what we want. Now, we introduced a new kind of object, and that's going to be the get player. Now, the player object had a lot of methods, as we saw earlier, but we're going to use one specific method to have the NPC say the player's name. So we're going to do player.get display name. This sort of method is in the API. I just know it because I've used it a bunch. As you go through the API, you'll start to learn methods and just have a few that become kind of in your head as sort of useless knowledge that you'll keep for the rest of your life. So at this point, I think I have a good chunk of the API memorized, so I kind of just can throw out a lot of those functions. But again, as you kind of read over time, you'll pick up a lot of those methods that you end up using a bunch. So if I instead of putting this parentheses for hello world, I'm going to put in the variable. I'm going to supply it with the variable called name. Now, you might be freaking out and say, Max, this doesn't make sense because you said that the npc.say function needs a string, or even in the API, it says it needs a string. Well, this variable that I made here, name, represents whatever comes out of this player.getDisplayName. This function returns a string. So if I'm saying that this variable name is equal to whatever this returns, it's basically saying the same as saying this function is the same as whatever my player name is. So it's going to be max1581. Yeah. So if I take this name and plug it into this say function, it's going to have the NPC say whatever this name is. So if I right click him now, you're going to say my name, which is great. Now, if you want to have it say hello to the player, then you have to get a little bit more creative. Now, you can do simple math or addition in JavaScript. So if I want to say variable a, I'm doing this outside the function now, which is a little bit strange, I know, but don't worry, it'll still work. Variable a is equal to 1 plus 2. Basically, variable a is going to be equal to 3 then, because variable a is just equal to whatever this statement is altogether, you know? You can do this with floats. So you can do 1.0 plus 2.1. That'll return 3.0, or 3.1, sorry. And that'll kind of work, you know? Another thing you can do is kind of add strings together, if that makes sense. So let's say I want to say hello world, but I want to space this out into 2 different strings. How you do that, you'd make a first string called hello, and I'm including a space here for a very specific reason. And then you do a plus and you do another quote here and say world. So what we're saying is variable a is equal to this combined string of hello space world. Altogether, that's just going to spell out world. If I did no space there, then it's just going to be hello world as one word. So you need to either add a space here or add a space here, just because you want to space out those words so it actually looks like, a full sentence. So we're just going to do that here with our name. So if I do a plus here, oh, I lost my cursor. There we go. I'm going to space this out just so it looks all nice and easy to read. It's going to be, we're going to do a string here. We're going to say hello, and we're going to add a space here because there's no space in my name at the beginning. And it'd be weird to add another string to add a space. You can do that for the sake of clarity, but I don't really like doing that. So I'm just going to say hello space plus whatever this string is for my name. So if I right click now, it's going to say hello max 1581. And that kind of combined those two strings together. Again, this is very bare bones stuff of the API. There's a bunch of different methods you can do with NPCs and players, but I'm really just trying to get you guys started on the basic knowledge that you can kind of build your own scripts up yourself. I think the best way to learn is through kind of trial and error. So making your own scripts and trying different stuff out is kind of the best way for you to kind of like learn this API and learn how to script. But yeah, that's kind of it for reading the API. I think next class we're going to move on to events.